What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel. So continuing our discussions on DC Rebirth, we pick up now with Green Arrow, and this is actually a one-shot called Sins of the Mother. Now, again, this deals a lot with Emiko, and her character is really well done in this particular story. I actually really like what Benjamin Percy's doing with her because he's really fleshing her out in a lot of different ways. Now, again, at the end of the life and death of Oliver Queen, we learned that Emiko was actually a double agent, that where previously it appeared as though she was working against Oliver Queen on behalf of her mother, that it actually turned out that she had basically been working from the shadows to save Oliver Queen, to keep him alive in the face of almost guaranteed death. The problem with this was that in this final battle, which of course you can find that video down in the description, but in this final battle, she was effectively tranquilized by her mother and then taken away before Oliver Queen could step in. And so this essentially continues her story. Now, with her mother taking her away, of course, you know, she really chastises Emiko in a lot of different ways for what she considers to be her recklessness, or for what she considers to be her foolishness, but we also learn that Emiko's mother was a double agent as well, and she'd been working for another party aside from those that she was initially working with regards to the life and death of Oliver Queen. And so again, we follow Emiko when she gives us this kind of play-by-play in a lot of ways of her early life when she first encountered Oliver Queen, because remember, she was introduced as the sort of illegitimate daughter of Robert Queen in the sense that she is the, you know, half-sister of Oliver, but she's not a direct biological sister in the sense that she's not the direct child of both of Oliver Queen's parents. Instead, she's really just the child of an affair. But because of this, when she eventually, you know, linked up basically with Oliver, there was a lot of debate going on back and forth, a lot of arguing because they didn't really see eye to eye. And the reason behind this is because Emiko's backstory is very similar to Damian Wayne in the sense that Damian Wayne was basically brought to Batman once he was in his pre-teens, but by that point in his life, he was already a very accomplished assassin as he'd been trained by Talia al Ghul and the League of Assassins. And so because of that, he was very difficult to kind of turn around, to reel back in, to bring back to normalcy, and as opposed to being this extremely violent and dangerous child. Emiko is nowhere near as extreme as Damian Wayne was, but she is someone that spent a lot of her early days under the tutelage of an assassin guild. And so because of that, she was taught to be an assassin. Now, this was also beneficial for Oliver Queen in the sense that when she came on board, he didn't really have to train her in terms of, you know, stealth and guile and espionage, subterfuge. She already knew all that stuff. Instead, it was really him just trying to get to grips with who she was as a person and trying to work with her in terms of the two of them forming a brother and sister relationship. Now, one of the other funny things about this is she talks about her relation with Oliver Queen in the sense that he was trying to introduce her to a very normal life, in the sense, or at least as normal as Oliver Queen gets. And she even goes as far as to say that he made her watch movies, play board games, you know, movies like The Goonies, Hoosiers, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, in my mind, I have a hard time grasping a scenario where anyone would be forced to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, it's one of the best movies ever made. Like, I want to know, if you've never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, post a comment, I want to know. Because Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the best movies ever made. Like, Indiana Jones is one of the best movie series ever made, and Raiders of the Lost Ark was absolutely amazing. I loved it. I loved Raiders of the Lost Ark. But the fact remains here that Oliver really does what he can to kind of reintegrate her back into normal society, but she also works as, you know, not really like Speedy, I guess not really as Speedy or as Arsenal, but effectively as a sidekick of his. And so with the two of them working together, the two of them effectively being a team, what we also learn is there's been a lot going on in Seattle. And what I mean is there have been a rash of robberies that have been committed by young people for reasons that don't seem to be known, in the sense that there's a kid that basically tried to carjack a woman. You know, there's a kid that was racing off on a motorcycle, a kid whose heart effectively just stopped, you know, while he was in police custody. No one really knew why, but for Emiko, because of the fact that she is so distant from normal society, instead of, you know, trying to live a normal life the way that Oliver instructed her to, she actually turned her attention to trying to figure out this mystery, you know, what's going on here. And so what she did is she actually infiltrated a group of elite citizens, or I guess elite students in her school. A lot of the kids who were involved in a lot of different things, you know, sports, music, community service, so on and so forth, but all of them shared one unique trait, which was this watch, or at least it seemed like a band of sorts that had the same symbol. symbol. Now, as she follows them, we actually find out that this symbol belongs to the Clock King. Now, something that I want to point out here is that this is not William Tuchman. This is not the original Clock King that most everybody's familiar with. That version of the Clock King is alive, but this is a new one operating with a different agenda. And we'll actually find out a little more about him as we go on. But jumping back to the modern day, we actually find out that the mother of Emiko was working effectively for the Yakuza based out of Tokyo, Japan. Now, this is something that's really cool with regards to what Benjamin Percy writes. I wouldn't go as far as to say that Benjamin Percy is like an expert on the different gangs of the world, but I will go as far as to say that his indication here of the Yakuza actually seems to be pretty accurate. For those of you guys who don't know, the Yakuza are really like one of the most prominent gangs. I think they're about 102,000 members worldwide, but they're one of the most prominent gangs based out of Asia, but they operate around the world. They're really like one of these, transnational organizations as part of the, criminal underworld, but they're also very rooted in Japanese tradition. They're kind of this amalgamation between new Japanese beliefs and old Japanese beliefs. For example, their ranking system, their hierarchy is very indicative of new Japanese beliefs. So you have like a president, and the chain of command kind of goes down from there. But they're very traditional in terms of honor, in the sense that Amiko's mother tells her is that because of the fact that her father was previously part of the Yakuza and had failed, that his shame became her shame because she bore the same blood as her father, the blood that was passed down to Emiko. And so it's really one of these things where it's not, a physical kind of shame in the sense that, she is her father's daughter. And so she will bear the shame of her father, and everyone in her family's line will bear that shame as well. And so because of that, Emiko is basically someone who's looked at as, by the Yakuza as someone that either needs to be eliminated or at the very least needs to be brought before them in order for Amiko's mother to make penance for her perceived shame, as well as Emiko being someone that can work on behalf of the Yakuza. Now, in truth, this is really, behind the scenes in terms of the bigger picture, I would say this is really just an instance where the Yakuza just want Emiko to work for them. Because remember, she's one of the foremost assassins, and that's really one of the cool things about DC Comics, and that's what I like about Benjamin Percy's writing. DC is markedly different from Marvel Comics when it comes to the overall world. And this is something I actually didn't realize until I jumped into the New 52, but DC is very real world in terms of how things exist. In Marvel Comics, you don't really have the Yakuza. They're not really like a main force. I mean, they exist. They're an organization that's there, but Marvel focuses more on fictional organizations. So like Advanced Idea Mechanics, Hydra, different things like that. The Friends of Humanity, which was an organization that existed in the 80s. I'm sorry, in Marvel Comics in the 90s or the 80s, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they have all these different fictional organizations that exist out there. DC goes very real world, and it creates a lot of relatability here. But the problem here for Emiko is that she spent so much time free of control with regards to being lorded over by other organizations that she doesn't see herself as a tool that can be used by someone else. Instead, she sees herself as a free woman. She's like, I fight my own wars. I operate by my own agenda, and I will not be taken under the tutelage of someone that I don't want to be trained by and forced to do things that I don't want to do. And so she effectively turns against her mom and seems to essentially run away. And so from here, we jump back to Seattle with the Clock King. And this is where we learn that there's a lot more going on here in the sense that, these kids are coming out of the Clock King's building. They seem really, really amped up. They seem really excited. But the Clock King begins speaking with Emiko. And when she offers, to pay for information, or when she offers to try to attain something, ultimately he says, no, try this watch on. Try this watch on. It'll help you out. And effectively, it seems to have some kind of a catch to it. Now, again, we'll kind of, jump back to this, but we basically pick up in the current day with Emiko in Tokyo. Now, because of the fact that Emiko is, or I guess, Emiko's mother is more or less being shanghaied into forcing Emiko to become part of the Yakuza, Emiko's response is, well, then let's just take out the Yakuza. Let's take out their crime boss, sort of send a message that they don't mess with us. Now, the Yakuza is very much like Hydra from Marvel Comics in the sense that if the crime boss is taken out, another guy will take his place. And Emiko's not really looking to eliminate the entirety of the Yakuza. What she's looking to do is to prove a point, to say, I don't care what you guys do, but you don't come after me, and you don't come after the people that I care about. You leave us alone. And so this is the message she intends to send out. The issue with this is that she basically wanders into this karaoke nightclub as essentially a front for the Yakuza. And this is why I say Benjamin Percy does a great job with this, because that's usually how it works. I mean, this is effectively, I imagine a haven for money laundering, for criminals of the world. It's a very seedy organization, a very seedy place. But when she gets in there, she gets up on stage and basically goes against one of the guys who's fighting. And the reason why she does this is because if she successfully beats this guy, who seems to be someone that people look at as one of the most formidable fighters there, then it means that the head of the Yakuza will take notice of her. It means they'll realize who she is. Now, what this will probably do is grant her an audience, and then she she would say, okay, fine, I'll take this as an opportunity to kill the main boss, to kill the top guy of the Yakuza. And so things go almost exactly as she plans, in the sense that she jumps into the fight and immediately starts engaging in a battle with him. Now from here, we switch back again to the past with regards to Seattle and the Clock King. And of course we have Oliver Queen and Emiko going against these kids, you know, that she was trailing before, that were part of her school, that were knocking over a bank, that were constantly keeping themselves wound up, that were always doing something in order to keep their energy up. And the reason for this is revealed when she begins to, at least it seems like Emiko's taking ill. And when she travels to the Clock King, we learn that this guy's actually a drug dealer. Now, again, this is a marked difference from Talkman. This is a marked difference from the Clock King as we originally knew him, in the sense that this new guy is effectively peddling a drug that requires people to constantly solicit his services. Now, the reason for that is because when they put on the watch, it begins pumping a hyperstimulant into their body. And if they do not go back to the Clock King and acquire more hyperstimulant, their bodies will effectively shut down. And so this is really, really interesting, because this shows us that not all the villains that exist out there in DC Comics are out there in your face. You know, the world is aware of them. Sometimes it's just one guy operating out of a nondescript store who's effectively tricking the entire community into really just becoming, you know, drug addicts, more or less, is really the best way to put it here. But I kind of like what's going on with this, you know, with Benjamin Percy and this Clock King guy. I like the direction this is going in. I really love to see, you know, where the future of this holds. But what we also have is what at least what seems like Emiko getting past this, but then eventually we find out that Oliver Queen also has one of these watches. Now, whether or not Oliver Queen took the watch of Emiko is something that we don't know yet. All we know is that he has a watch on his wrist. And so it may be that it's somewhere along the line he, you know, fell into business with the Clock King, and he believes he's operating secretly. The two of them just haven't really synced up with regards to their discovery of who the Clock King is and what he's about. Or it may just be that he just took it from Emiko in order to relieve her of her burden. Now that seems most likely to be the case because of the fact that it is Oliver Queen. But again, you know, with regards to this comic, it's left very much ambiguous because we don't see the wrist of Emiko, so we don't know if that's the case. It's not one of the biggest things in the world, but I like this because it's basically setting the seeds for future stories. It's setting the seeds for small things. And that's why I like a lot, you know, comics in general. That's why I like, you know, good storytelling, because it'd be very easy for Benjamin Percy to take the road and to say, and here are things that happen, and that story's over. And here's more things that happen, and that story's over. It'd be very easy for him to, you know, to begin the story and end the story within a handful of issues, as opposed to creating, you know, these threads that branch out into other comics. You know, maybe you see some discussion at the beginning of one comic book issue, but then you don't learn anything about it until 5, 6, 7, 8 issues down the line, and then suddenly it becomes important. I really like that because it keeps you reading, it keeps you guessing, it keeps you wondering what's going to happen next in the story. It's just kind of my 2 cents. That's one of the reasons why I love the Green Arrow writing so far. It's absolutely beautiful the way it's done. But again, you know, jumping back to the present day in Tokyo, of course, Emiko is able to easily subdue this guy, you know, subdue this fighter. And in doing so, she's granted an audience with the Yakuza. But instead of killing her, they actually address her as Emiko, as a queen, and they say it's time for us to basically discuss your future, most likely a future as part of the Yakuza. But with that being said, again, this is really just a one-shot. You know, this is just kind of Benjamin Percy saying, hey, you know, we're going to be building on things later on, but this one shot and the next one, which is Killing Time, I think, are just designed to sort of build things up and give us some perspective and again, lay the groundwork for future stuff in the Green Arrow mythos. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you hit the subscribe button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, drop a like and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about this so far. Now, we'll catch you all later. Peace.